TV shows made by rappers. A pretty niche, small subcategory that doesn't even exist. I talked about both Atlanta and Dave before when I made this FX shows video, but I'm gonna talk a little bit more about them. But we recently got a new submission into this small subcategory, the Vince Staples Show. This 5-episode Netflix surreal comedy show is great. I mean, honestly, it's so short that you should just watch all 5 of them in a row like a movie. Vince Staples is really funny. I saw this guy first on The Cave, Kenny Beats' YouTube series, The Cave, and it was a really funny episode. He's just a funny guy, but he's funny. I mean, the show is funny. The situations they get into is just ridiculous. It has an ever-changing setting and cast, new side cast and new setting in every single episode. Every episode is unique. It feels different from the other. There's not this overarching story that you really have to pay attention to, other than the fact that he's not this giant, huge person, but not small, where he's like comfortable and well off, but not living lavishly. I do really love that each episode is so individual. Every single one is unique. They go to like a water park, one's in jail, one's in a bank. The final episode runs through so many different settings. It's like a chase episode. Like I said, watch the whole thing as a movie. That's what I did. I watched all 5 in a row, and that's honestly the best way to experience this show. All right, we're gonna talk about Donald Glover shows, and it doesn't only include Atlanta. This man has done so much stuff. I mean, he's made movies, he's made TV shows, he's made so much music. He has a stand-up special. Like, this man is just out here creating new things all the time. His most recent show was Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Amazon Prime original. It's 8 episodes, hour episodes, so it's about 8 hours of experience, and it's good. I watched it over the course of a week, like last week. It was a new experience for Donald Glover, I think, where it really leans more into the action. I mean, there's chase scenes, there's shootout scenes. Well, it's Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It's a retrain of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And he doesn't only create it, he stars in it as well. If you haven't seen this, it's a really good watch. I think he does a really good job at expanding these characters. I mean, Jane Smith and John Smith, they both go through a really big transformation throughout the entirety of the show. And Jane is like a different character by the end. She's opened up and vulnerable and a real character and entirely different from this shell, this hard shell that she was at the very beginning of the show. Another show I want to talk about before we talk about Atlanta, because I mean, I could talk about Atlanta all day. I love that show. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. But first, let's talk about Swarm. That's another show that Donald Glover created recently. I didn't even know he made this until somebody recommended it to me and told me Donald Glover wrote it, created it. Now, unlike Atlanta and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, he doesn't star in this one, but it's about real life scenarios. It's not fiction. Tweets and news broadcasts, all real stuff. It's a dark, surreal drama. The subject matter is really grim, kind of hard to wrap your head around. Like, it's such a wild subject matter. It's about obsession and the extents in which a super fan will go to protect the person they're a super fan of. But it's some wacky situations, you know. I mean, this show goes hard. It's really worth the watch, especially if you're like coming off of Atlanta and you watch Atlanta and you want more stuff made by Donald Glover. I mean, this is a great next step, right? I don't want to give away too much. Swarm, it goes crazy. It's definitely worth a watch. Atlanta, man, I could talk about this show all day. I love this show. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. It has an amazing beginning, middle, end, full, satisfying ending. Makes you want more, but you know that if there were more, it may just start to turn into shit, because that's what everything does. Shows that just keep going past their ending, you know, don't do it. Not that this show would turn to shit, because it couldn't. Honestly, I think of this show as a 10 out of 10. It's this amazing, surreal drama comedy. I mean, it's this amazing balance between surrealism and real life, where everything could be real, but it's not. The last episode is this existential surrealism breakdown that makes you think, is any of this real? Was any of this real? And does it even matter if any of it's real? I mean, you were here for the ride. It's just a fantastic experience just being here. There's an amazing overarching storyline of these characters, Earn and Paperboy, going from rags to riches and just becoming what they are at the end of the show. It's fantastic, start to finish. But you also have all these little subplots and standalone episodes. I mean, some of the standalone episode are movies that you can just watch. Season 1, episode 7 is this episode where Paperboy goes on to this reality talk show, or not reality talk show, a talk show called Montage, where they have this banter that feels like a real talk show, but it's entertaining in the way that a talk show just isn't to me. And it shows these real-time commercials. I mean, it's like this interdimensional cable shit from Rick and Morty, where it's like TV, but not. Season 2, episode 6 is this horror movie that is completely standalone. Darius goes on a solo adventure to pick up this piano, and things just get dark and twisted, and it just keeps escalating and escalating until you realize that was insane. You get through an entire episode and you're like, I wish this was 3 times as long and was a full horror movie. I mean, it's a surreal horror movie. It's like an A24 movie. It's weird, it's cool, it's creepy, it's eerie. Season 3 starts off with this banger episode that doesn't involve any of the main cast. It's just its standalone thing. It's once again kind of like a surreal horror movie, but in a completely different way. It's great. You just gotta watch this show if you haven't.
Hey, what are you doing? What the hell gonna be?
If we're talking about shows made by rappers, we gotta talk about the show that's made by rappers, plural, Odd Future. The show is amazing. Loiter Squad, I mean, this was one of my favorite shows for a really long time. Its running time was 2012 to 2014, which is the perfect time for an edgy 13-year-old to laugh his ass off at a really crude and just ridiculous show. I mean, it's kind of like Jackass and Eric Andre's put together sketch comedy. So they do a lot of them in real time, out in public.
See me levitate?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, watch this.
Now that was pretty funny.
Dave. One of the best shows to come out recently. A new FX comedy, surreal drama. It's more a drama comedy than a surreal drama comedy. There's obviously surreal parts. There's obviously some parts that are just wild, right? There's this one episode where Dave goes into his own mind and fights himself, and there's like dreams happening, and just everything is all over the place. But once again, Dave has this great overarching main storyline where, you know, it's once again kind of this rags to riches in their own scene, right? I mean, he's a music creator at his core. So seeing this story that he fabricates along the way, it's great. You get to see what he does in real life, but fabricated by him in this. It's really fantastic to see.
Somebody suck me!
This show, you get to see every character in every single state. You get to see Dave happy, you get to see him confident, you get to see him vulnerable, you get to see him fighting himself. I mean, this show is just so different from everything else. I think the character development along the way is unmatched. Dave, you get to see so many backstory parts, but also how he is now and how he was just a few years ago. I mean, you get to see everything from Dave. Once again, you have this array of emotion. You get these wild belly laughs, the funniest shit you've ever seen. That's like the funniest scenarios you can get into.
Yeah, I was actually just gonna pipe.
Funny jokes, the stupid shit that makes you laugh and not really understand why.
You've never just like imagined like what Tone's cock could look like.
Y'all crazy.
The characters are amazing this show. Not only Dave, you also have Gata, you have Els. There's an episode of Dave's parents that are just about his parents. These characters have levels of depth that you don't see from side characters. You get to see the side of Gata that you would never want to see. You get to see the side of Gata that he doesn't want you to see.
I'm fucking bipolar.
It has some of the craziest features you would expect, from Young Thug and Trippie Redd to fucking Brad Pitt. I mean, the last episode is literally a Brad Pitt movie, and it's amazing. It is one of my favorite TV episodes, period. This is another show that I could talk about for hours and hours, but I won't. You just gotta watch these shows. Comment down below some more shows that kind of feel like these shows, and subscribe. Look at the box. Yeah, subscribe.